Seeing folks in the best light. Dear Editor, we hung a new picture in the living room the other day. Why don't you hang it here? Charles asked. In that dark corner, I protested. I want light on it, to bring out those blue tones and show up the color. In the end, we rearranged the room to hang the picture in the right light. When we were through, Charles said teasingly, if you women would go to as much trouble to see your neighbors in their best light as you have this picture, well, the gabble, gobble, and get clubs wouldn't have so much to gabble about. And why shouldn't we think of Mrs. Smith in the light of her generosity instead of her poor housekeeping? Why shouldn't we let the light of Mr. White's devotion to his invalid wife make up for his surliness to the neighbors? Pictures are people. The best light is one which emphasizes virtues rather than faults. Suggestion, Missouri. Sunlight in her lane. My mother is forever darning holes in endless socks, but she loves the scent of clover and the drifting 4 o'clocks. Forever patching garments worn and small, scouring kettles, baking loaves, but the garden pinks against the wall give a fragrance keen as cloves. She washes little dirty faces, and she kisses bruises, healing pain, while the shadows blow like fine gray laces against the sunlight in her lane. Each day brings its drab, tired hours. There are homely tasks to do, but she has a garden, flowers, and a window to look through. 14-year-old, New York. This is Shaylin here. I hope you're enjoying this look back into the 1930s at the Farmer's Wife magazine and enjoying some of these letters to the editor. I did want to interrupt to share a special meaning behind this block, Mrs. Brown. I had a very special 5th grade teacher named Mrs. Brown who was a huge influence in my life. And when I saw this block and knew that Teacher Appreciation Week was this week, I wanted to do a special video just focusing on this block and share an essay I wrote almost 5 years ago that I got to share with her, fortunately. She did pass away in 2021, and so I'm so thankful I got to share these words with her. And with it being Teacher Appreciation Week, I thought this would be very fitting to read this essay and share this block, which I made in reds, which was her favorite color, and with tulip fabric, which was one of her favorite flowers. So this is an essay I wrote called An Essay in Honor of Teacher Appreciation Week. It was June of 2005, and one by one, classmates were getting up to thank their host teachers for everything. My classmates and I were getting ready to graduate with our bachelor degrees and teaching certificates, and that night we were celebrating the completion of a year of student teaching with our instructors and host teachers. The knot in my throat grew as the number of students left to speak began to dwindle. Finally, I was the only one left. When an instructor looked at me and asked if there was anyone else who wanted to speak, I remained silent. But this time it wasn't because I was afraid I didn't have the words. It was because I knew I couldn't get through what I wanted to say without turning into a puddle of mush. I felt terrible that my host teacher was the only one who didn't get a public acknowledgement of appreciation. But she wasn't just a host teacher that the university set me up with. She was my beloved 5th grade teacher, Lynn Brown. The night wrapped up shortly after that opportunity, and I approached her feeling like the shy 5th grader I once was, telling her I just couldn't get the words out. She hugged me and said, "It's okay. I know we'll always be special to each other." I haven't forgotten that moment, and with this week being Teacher Appreciation Week, I'm going to do something she taught me how to do: express my thoughts through writing. I was always perplexed by the blurters in class, those students who could call out an answer or make a comment without a second thought, even after being reprimanded to raise their hands numerous times. To me, it took an extreme amount of confidence to do that. I was painfully shy in elementary school, afraid to raise my hand for fear of sounding dumb because I didn't have my idea completely articulated in my mind. By the time I got the nerve up to raise my hand, the discussion had often moved on. I still struggle with this to a lesser extent, but going into 5th grade, it was intense, until I began to understand the power of writing. I don't remember specific lessons Lynn taught, but I remember her warmth. Whether it was written praise and a smiley face drawn on my paper, or an encouraging word wrapped in her southern accent, I began to feel empowered when I wrote, like I could finally get my ideas and creativity out. I felt challenged, but not always in a state of frustration. I experienced success, and she let me know it. 5th grade was fun. My classmates were kind, and I looked forward to going to class. We had 2 guinea pigs she let us name, Brownie and Little Oinker. That year set the tone for the rest of my public school experience. I loved school. When I was in high school, I was standing in line at Safeway when I heard a familiar voice saying, excuse me," as she pushed past customers toward me. It was Lynn coming to hug me and see how I was doing. I was happy she remembered me. During my senior year of high school, when I had to do volunteer work for my leadership class, she was the first person who came to mind to talk to. She seemed delighted to have me work in her classroom with her students. I remembered how much fun it was to be in 5th grade, and I got a taste of how rewarding it could be, so much so that when high school graduation came and I had to decide what I wanted to be when I grew up, only one profession came to my mind. A few years later, when it came time to student teach, I was ecstatic that she agreed to be my host teacher. During that year, I knew I was learning from a master. It took some adjustment when she said, "You can stop calling me Mrs. Brown now. Call me Lynn." I also got my first peek behind the curtain of teaching, the things I never saw or thought about as a student. The hours of planning lessons and creating assessments, the never-ending piles of papers and projects to grade, the before and after school meetings, the trainings, the phone calls and emails to respond to, the copies to run, the art projects and science lessons to prepare materials for, the lunches that get cut short when a student is having a difficult day, the mediation between students having conflicts with their on and off again friends, because let's face it, nothing is bigger to them in those moments, and they could care less that you're trying to show them how to find the circumference of a circle or infer what an author meant. That fun and engagement I experienced as a student didn't just happen because Lynn was a talented teacher. It happened because she was dedicated and willing to go above and beyond what her 45-minute planning time allowed. What struck me the most as I learned from her that year was how happy she seemed. No matter how demanding the day, she made relationships and rapport with students and colleagues appear effortless. I don't know what magic well she drew from, but she always seemed to have more of herself to give. On that June evening in 2005, I wanted to express to her how thankful I was, not just for being a phenomenal host teacher that year, but for the compassion, encouragement, inspiration, and courage she gave me, all of which have stayed with me since I was 10 years old. There is no doubt in my mind that she has played a vital role in the teacher and person I am today, and the professional accomplishments and personal victories I've experienced since having her in my life. I know a teacher won't be this for every child he or she encounters, but Lynn was that for me. I think everyone has the potential to be this for a child, but teachers have a special platform to really make an impact, good or bad, and it's not something I take lightly. I want to thank Lynn for using her platform to do so much good in my life. When the school year wraps up and students walk out the doors for summer vacation, a teacher may never see or hear from them again, and I know most teachers want nothing more than to know that they've made some kind of positive impact on a child's life. The impact of that 5th grade year in Mrs. Brown's class has rippled over decades now, and I want her to know that, even if I can still only do it through writing. She has since retired, but continues to show up for me, be it coming to my wedding, driving 2 hours to meet my daughter, Ava Lynn, when she was born, and even attending her birthday parties. I don't know that I'll ever be the caliber of teacher she was, but she sure gave me something to aspire to. So during this Teacher Appreciation Week, I want to express my sincere gratitude for the teacher who started it all for me. For everything, big and small, thank you, Mrs. Brown.